Hey everyone. Oh, I don't have you.
Hello.
I don't have YouTube up, so you're gonna see. I got the wrong thing. I just put up a
Oh
spreadsheet no one was
no.
supposed to see. Uh, don't worry about that. Ignore that. That's my spreadsheet of.
Ignore me.
Ignore me. I love that. Adventure Brothers is my
Yeah,
favorite.
Venture
One of
Brothers,
my favorite
absolutely.
shows of all time.
I have a
Uh,
like we have a thing in Foundry where my character is always mounted, but so we have to use the mount to move around, but we want to see from like the vision does not come from my mount, it comes from my character. So I move in the character, but people always thought that I was in the room. So I changed it to the ignore me from Venture Brothers. So it's like,
nice.
ignore me. I'm just here so I can see into the
God, I
room.
love. The Venture Brothers came out in 2004. It's been that long. I love the
Yeah, it's
Venture
been a
Brothers.
long time.
And they would come to New York Comic Con because they were in Manhattan. So back in 2004, 2010s, Comic Cons weren't what they are now, and you would go and just see them, and they were so interesting. They're very interesting guys. They work really slow, but man, the last few seasons, oof, so good. And I even have the Venture Brothers T-shirt club. I used to wear those
Uh-huh.
all the time. Oh God, I love that. I actually rewatch it every year or so. I rewatch all the episodes, and I was so upset when it was canceled. But they said they're doing a movie to wrap everything up at least. So
That's good.
yeah, but are we working? Can people see us? Can you see us? I can't look. I forgot to set things
I
up.
see us, so yeah, it
Can
is
you hear
working.
us? Are we
Hold on, I'll put it on sound. I was not listening to it.
either am I?
Yes.
All
Yes,
right,
I can
good.
hear us.
So once again, for those people who are new, I didn't do a show last week just because it was like Wednesday. It was like
It was
everyone
like
was off,
Thanksgiving.
like Thanksgiving basically. And today's show, I actually have to leave at 3. I have to finish by 3 on the dot, so we might go shorter. And I got lazy and didn't even find a guest. I probably could have found one, but everyone who wants to ask a question, feel free to ask a question. Super chats get answered right away. If you want to be cool like Cheese of Ages, you can join the channel and you'll get cool stuff. And how was your turkey day, Mark? What do you do? Because your family's on the East Coast and you live on the West Coast. So what do you do
Yeah,
for
well,
Turkey
back
Day?
when I was on the East Coast, I would we would get together and go to like our aunt and uncle's place, which was in New Jersey. Like the stereotypical going to New Jersey for Thanksgiving. I don't know. A lot of people did that for some reason. But now that my family is all across the country and out of the country, like we don't do that anymore. So I just sort of stayed at home with Linda.
Did you
Didn't
even have
really do it.
turkey or anything like, or you just had
I'm a
like
vegetarian,
pasta?
so I never have turkey.
Okay. Well, did you have the other things?
Meliagris ancestry or heritage is the closest I come to having
That's
turkey.
right. Meliagris. Where'd that come from? I didn't even ask you. I didn't even know where the name came
It's the
from.
name of the genus of turkey, but
Oh,
it's also
I
a very
knew.
fantasy.
I knew there was a like. I was like, that's too weird for Mark to make that up.
It's a very fantasy sounding name though,
No,
like
it's good. It's cool.
because it's named after Meleager, who is like the villainous knight who kidnaps Guinevere in the story Knight of the Cart, where Lancelot is first was first introduced by Chrétien de Troyes.
So
So like it weirdly Turkey's genus is named after a
that's
evil
cool.
Dark Knight villain.
So for those people who want to know the story for the turkey heritage, so the dungeon heritage is infamous because we did that in 24 hours. The turkey heritage was we doubled it. This time I had 48 hours to do this one
And it
because
was shorter, so it worked out. But we did
we're getting
translate it to
better.
5e during
This
that
time,
time,
right. This time
which we
I
did
didn't
not
wait
do
a
before.
month. Yeah, I didn't wait a month. And on top of it, so in 48 hours, I got the
You got the
heritage.
art
I
from
got the
nothing, right?
2 pieces of art from 2 different artists.
Because you used stock art on the dungeon
Yeah,
one,
the
or not
dungeon
stock art,
was
but like things that you
I
already
had
had from
already. Yeah,
Sheppy.
it was a combination of stock art and Sheppy art. This is 2 pieces of unique art. The background was created with a photo slash combo of like we also designed it. We finished it for 5e. we got it into the Foundry module for. Oh, did we forget to do the Foundry module for 5e? Oh no, they're still working on the Foundry mod. Wait, did they?
I don't know.
No, I think they're still working on the Foundry module for 5e. So the 5e Foundry module hasn't been finished yet. But the Pathfinder one, we got it in. And I got into Path Builder. So that's our new thing, by the way. I don't know if I've been talking to people, but we managed to figure out how to get everything in the Path Builder. So if you go to battlezoo.com, you can download all the public information with anything that's open content you can get installed in the Path Builder. And it's pretty easy to do. I gave some detailed instructions, and we're going to do that for all of our stuff going forward because it's the #1 requested item. And in the old days, you had to go to Dave and ask him to do it, and he did it for us. That was the problem. He did it for us, and then he said like everyone was asking him to do it. So he's like, forget that. So he's like, yeah, after I did it for you, everyone wanted it. So then he's like, I'll just give everyone the opportunity. I don't know if anyone else is doing it, but we are. And so
yeah, I've seen other people doing it too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't really
it's
paid
this thing
attention.
that people are now doing now that it's available, and that's really cool. I'm glad about that.
Yeah. But the thing is, I was thinking, it always happens to me. It's like, it always happens when I take a shower. That's what 99.9% of these ideas. I was thinking about it. I was like, what can we do? And I'm like, turkey. I'm like, wait, we have a bird heritage. We have a bird ancestry. We could just use that, and you don't have to write a whole. Because I was like, I can never ask Mark to do another ancestry in 2 days. It's just too much. But then I'm like, but I bet we could do a heritage. I'm like, I bet we could do a heritage. And you were like, sure. And you did that in like 0 time. It took nothing.
Oh yeah. Like a heritage does not take very long.
Yeah.
Now adding the feats took a little bit of extra
time. Yeah,
that was.
Oh yeah. Well, first you just did a heritage, but I'm like, I can't just give like 1 paragraph. So we added some feats.
No, like I even said if you want this to have more meat to it.
Literally more meat.
Yes. We can add some feats, and so with those, it still didn't take very long because. The dungeon ancestry may be shorter than like all of our Year of Monsters by a significant amount, but it was still pretty long. So it took a while. Whereas Meleagris is just like a heritage with like, what is it, 4 feet, something like that.
And Cheese of Ages ran a 1-shot with a heritage Poppet turkey plushie. There you go. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, Cheese of Ages are making that sandwich ancestry, so they could have a turkey sandwich as one of the heritages.
Well, it's funny because everyone does. The subtle difference between us and I think everyone else, because a lot of people do these heritages and ancestries and races, but they do them, I think, kind of silly. And I'm like, well, we don't really do them that like they are silly, but they work. They're serious. Like you can play this. Like it's not, it's as serious as any other ancestry, and it has just
also being really silly of a concept.
It's a silly concept, but
it's a silly concept we take mechanically seriously.
Yes, I mean it works. It's not like because I've seen a lot of these. See a lot of these that are done silly and then they're like almost unplayable, like they're silly. So Ninja Slayer actually asked if the Indigo Isles is in the physical book section. So here's the thing. Well, it's not. It never was.
The character guide.
The character guide. The character guide. So the character guide. I am looking into. So to print something up, you really have to do 1,000 books, and so that's 1,000 books for Pathfinder and 5e, and it's too expensive. Even as a soft cover, it's really expensive. But I have been talking to people who have lots of experience on print on demand, and because I'm talking to some other publishers who, when they publish books, they sometimes will only publish 100 books. And I was like, dude, how do you do that? They're like, print on demand. And I was like, oh, really? And they go, yeah, it's a trade-off, because if you do a professional offset print in China, you got 1,000 books and they're amazing, but you got to wait like 6 months. That's another problem. It takes like 3 to 6 months to get the books. You can't make any money on them unless you sell hundreds of them. And so I don't know how well this will sell. It probably will not sell 1,000 copies hardcover. It just doesn't. Um, and so I'm looking into print on demand. And to be honest, I hate to say it, I've actually had long discussions with people about this. The PDFs like massively outsell physical books. It's not even close, and it's only widening every day. And I know,
Yeah, it
look,
depends on who you are, I think, too.
it's who you
Especially
are.
if
It's
you're
who
not
you are.
Paizo, people like to go in for PDFs.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I have physical books back here, but I'm one of those people, I hate to say it, I don't look at them. I kind of look at my PDFs all the time. I like having physical books. I do like having them, but I have turned into a PDF only type person as well.
I use physical books at the table, but we haven't played at the table in a long time now, thanks to COVID. So I've been using PDFs and archives of Nephthys more.
Exactly. And that's the other thing I use. And I mean, online tools, I think it's just going to continuously go that way. And I hate to say it, but, I had someone who lost their books and their shipment in Germany, and it took me a lot of time to work with them in the warehouse to get him his books. Good news is he got them yesterday, and he was very happy. But it was a huge amount of work to get him his books and to work out customs and all these issues and calling FedEx. And it was just like, oh my God, this is for one shipment. This is one shipment out of hundreds/thousands of shipments we send. And I can see why WotC is probably going to go nearly all digital in the future, or as they say, nearly. They're not going to go all digital, but nearly.
Didn't they put out their new oneD&D update today or something like that?
I think so. It's like every 2 weeks or something. I haven't really been following them that closely. But you know what? It's like...
Apparently people didn't like Dragonborn because they went back to the player's handbook one instead of the Fizzbands one that had a better breath weapon.
Got it. So Ninja Slayer, back to your original question. Yeah, I'm looking into a way that you can get them. So if you want a physical book, I will give you the option, and you'll be able to get it on print on demand, and then you can get it. So I'm looking into it, and the price will probably be close to the same. It'll probably be soft cover, hardcover. I can do both. You can do like what Drive-Through RPG does, because that's all print on demand. They just give you the option, and the price for a hardcover is 3 times the cost for the soft cover. So you can decide if you want it either way. You can just choose it. So I'm looking into that. I'm looking how to get that done. I'm working with some people. I just started that, so give me a little bit of time. But you're not the first person. It's a small number of people who want it. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, it might be like 50 people who want the print version. It's hard to say. So, and I mean, it's definitely not going to be 1,000. 1,000 books is, trust me, a lot of books. And then you got to warehouse them, and that costs money. It's like, it is a big pain. And that's why I see why everyone... I'm starting to see a lot of reasons why other people do what they do. So... Anyhow, so today's topic is why you should change your PCs in your long-running campaigns. And I thought this was an interesting topic because this has happened to me recently, and I don't know anyone else who really does this, and you can actually hear us doing it because it's on our podcast. So I run Adventure Paths, and I was always with the mindset of you have to run an adventure path or a long-running campaign with the same people using the same characters unless they die. And I don't know why I've had that mindset, and I think everyone just does. And a few years ago, when... no, it's not TPK more. It's actually something different. Is that a few years ago when we were doing Dead Sons, Chris Beamer had to stop playing for a small amount of time. And I was like, uh-oh. So I got Seth to take over his character, and he played his character. And it worked out so well because Seth knows Chris and they've been childhood friends that I kept Seth in the game, and then Chris made a new character. So Seth played Chris's character, and then Chris played a new character. So it was like a Freaky Friday, and it worked great. It was a lot of fun, and I've done it a few times since. Where, I mean, there's some spoilers here, but some of our recent games is that, after 10, 11 levels, some of our players are getting bored with their characters, or getting bored with the swashbuckler mark, or a few others, and then you sometimes you just get bored with your character. Hell, I get bored all the time with characters when I'm playing role-playing games, or like video games, and they just want something new. So what we've done in our games recently is, I've not had them TPK. I literally have them, they retire their characters, or their characters stay in the town, and while the rest of the party goes on, and then we get a new character in, they get to build a brand new character with limits, especially when it comes to gold. Like, we make sure, like, they have the same amount of gold, but all the old stuff from the old character, they keep it. They don't get to give away that. Or if they do give away, like, if they give away 3,000 gold pieces worth of stuff, then they have 3,000 gold pieces less for the new character. So it's not like a way to cheat the economy. And this way they get to start a new character with a new story introduced to the party. And I've actually started to do it more and more often. And I'm finding that not only do the PCs like it, but it mixes up the game. It mixes up the game for everyone. It mixes up the game for me as a GM. It mixes up for the other PCs, because now they have new tactics that they can use in combat. And it also is funny because in one of our games, there was a rogue, and then the rogue retired, and then they became a non-rogue, and now they don't have a rogue in the party. So whenever something comes up, it's like, remember when we used to have a rogue and those traps didn't constantly go off? Weren't those fun days? But they're gone. But they have different ideas. And I tell you, I've been doing this more and more. I'm starting to just tell people, like, you know what? Retire your characters, start new ones, especially if you're going from 1 to 20. Like, if you feel like at level 10 or 11 or 12 or something, you feel bored, fine. I have no problem with that. Let's start something new. And it's really kind of refreshing. What do you think, Mark? I know you're like you have a different thought on this than me.
I mean, I certainly think that if that's what your players want, then you should facilitate it and not try to like demand that they stick with their character. But
right.
In general, in my group, it is very rare for most of the players to switch out their characters if they don't die, but it's player based rather than like campaign based. We
right.
had one player back in college in the group who was constantly switching out characters.
Yeah.
And not only that, he actually caused us some issues due to the fact that he liked to switch out characters to established NPCs that the party had already met.
Oh yeah, I've done that.
But after he was finished playing them, he did not want someone else to play them, including the GM.
Oh well,
so he wanted them to be written off as if they left or something like that. So he had ideas for like, they were. This one is a Calistria worshiper was pursuing their revenge out of there. The problem was that at one point he drained our entire kingdom and Kingmaker of like all the clerics that the GM had ever introduced. So we just didn't have anyone to heal us. So we the name of the player was Alex. So we bought a staff of life for the party, which we named Anti-Alex because it was the healer that was going to heal us now that he had gotten rid of all the healers in the entire kingdom. Now that was a very specific circumstance that was due to idiosyncrasies, but the point there was part of the social contract is to listen to what the player wants and why they're changing. And like you mentioned, he was just bored of the character. He wanted to try something else. He found that NPC, whatever it was, the NPC of the week, like really interesting and wanted to explore their story. And so that's just sort of it's a good thing to do if that's what your players want. But if they want continuity and sort of like a deep continuing arc for the same character, then I think that's great too. And that's what my group usually likes.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, my group, this isn't for everyone, but this was happening in one of our recent games, and I could tell they were bored. I could just tell they were bored with their character. And I came to them and I said, hey, look, I think you're bored with your character. do you want to write them out and start something new? And they're like, really? And you know who it is. You know who I'm talking about. And they were surprised because they didn't want to mention it because they thought, like, oh, I can't do that. Like,
especially in an actual play, they probably thought that the character was like promoted and they had a lot of fans, right? Because it was for Edgewatch or sorry, Abomination or the circus one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Extinction Curse.
Extinction Curse. Yes, 3-ring adventure we call it. Yeah, and they have now they're having, you can see they're having a much better time. They're really excited. They're always trying out new stuff. They got to try out the dragon. And then, in fact, they used one of the feats that was at a level 14 feat that allows them to, like, be immune, to go over all... What's it called? They're allowed to use it where they could ignore all resistances. And I literally said, who was responsible for that?
The dragon mage made a magic to ignore resistances to like fire or cold.
But you have it at level 14 feet. I forgot what it's called for dragons.
It doesn't ignore immunity, just resistances.
Resistances. Oh, no, not immunity. Resistance. But I was like, because everything has resistances now. I'm like, at level 14, I'm like, who wrote this? Who designed that? Is so over. Oh, wait. We did. Okay, I can't be angry.
Steven, I will point this out.
I can't be angry at myself.
The wizard class has one that's like that too.
I 100% know. That's the thing.
Ours gives more reduction of resistance than the wizard
but
one,
it takes
but only
3
for
actions.
the dragons.
And it takes 3 actions.
And it's only for the dragon's elements.
Yes.
Whereas the one that the wizard has is for all, it will reduce resistance to everything, but it's only half as much.
I will say
ours is more powerful and thematic, but it's more narrow.
This is a unique experience for the first time in my life where someone is playing a dragon and continuously when something weird happens or there's a weird rule, I can't argue with it because we published it. I'm sure you're used to this, but for me it's new.
But I'm willing to argue with things that I published.
I'm not arguing. I don't argue at all. I'm just like, who wrote that? Oh, that's
I don't argue
we
either, but I'm willing to say, oh yeah, we made a mistake there. Let me flag it for errata, for example, which I did a lot. And when I was at Paizo and something weird was in the book that was like obviously messed up or something like that, and it came up at the table, I would flag it for errata and bring it up to the rest of the design team the next day.
By the way, I forgot to mention, you just missed, the holiday sale, Turkey Day sale, Cyber Monday sale, very big, very successful. We have a new sale going on right now. If you enter in the code DRAGONS, you can get 10% off, which is an additional 10. So all the dragon stuff's already 10% off. Get another 10% off.
Nice. So it's 20% off.
20%, in total.
Or is it like compounded so that it's 20 or 19%?
No, it's another 10. It's 10% off the 10% off. So it's actually a little bit more. It's like 20.
It's 10% off the 10% off. So
yes.
It's a little
like
bit
22%
less. It's 19% off, right?
No, it's more because if you take, oh no, maybe less. Maybe it's 19.
It's a little less if you do the
Whatever.
0.9 twice. It's only 19% off.
Okay, well now it doesn't sound as good, but if you go,
no, it's great.
If you go to Battle Zoo and you can get it for the Foundry module, you get it for the hardcover book. And you can get it for the PDF. So, and just go to battlezoo.com and enter in dragons.
Oh, nice.
And
I mean, people like dragons. I think that's one of our most popular things.
Yes. So right now, if you haven't seen the dragon book and have been thinking about it, now's the time. Because, I'm not going to do sales pretty often. I'll do them now because everyone's doing them. And everyone expects it, might as well. So, but back to the topic at hand is that I've had the opportunity to play other classes, and when you do society play, and that's expected. Like you're always playing with new people and new characters, but this is a campaign where you have a story and something integrated in. But if you're a GM and you're thinking, oh, everyone has to play the exact same character, like try this out, because I told you I've done it. We did it once out of necessity. And since then, we've done it. I'm doing it more and more often, and I'm really enjoying it because mentally, it makes the game more flexible. Mentally, if I know if someone dies, I'm not that worried because I'm like, oh, you're dead. Oh well, here's your new character. Like we've done it before. It's not that big a deal. We can bring you back in. It's like we figured out a seamless way to do it, and it doesn't seem to disrupt the game.
We have the technology.
Yeah, no, but it's actually freeing from a mental point of view because I always feel so bad, like if, oh my God, these guys are gonna die, like, or you're gonna kill everyone off. That TPK is a whole different thing, by the way. That's a whole other story. I'm talking about one or two characters dying off, and obviously you can resurrect them, but even if you're low level, you're level 4 or 5, you're like, I've seen this. This is a famous trope. It's like, oh, my character died. Who are you playing? It's like, I was playing Timmy the Rogue. Who are you playing? I'm like, I'm playing Timmy's twin brother, Jimmy the Rogue.
Mhm.
Like that I see all the time. And then when Jimmy dies, it's like, well, he's got a cousin, Zimmy the Rogue, and he's gonna like you
Yep.
just keep playing the same one over and over again, which you can do if you want. Oh, Mark disappeared. Oh, he's back.
I'm back. No, that was definitely a thing that actually the same player who was switching characters did when his characters died. It's just like, oh, it's this sister of the other person who died. But another thing you were pointing out there about backup characters does bring me to a different idea than just flat out switching, which is having a roster of characters.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously, if you play an organized play, that's an easier thing to do where you just have a roster of potential characters that you can bring in. When you see who else is signed up for the scenario, you'll be like, oh, my archer would be good for this group or something like that. But even in a campaign, you can have backup characters. For instance, back in Pathfinder First Edition, just like at a certain point, if you got knocked out, you would probably die because the death and dying rules were like not very lenient. And so when I was playing for the first time and Linda was running Council of Thieves, I kind of assumed that I had a pretty good chance of dying. So I made a backup character that was like, this will be my character if I die. I'd like to introduce them to the campaign because of the fact that we were a top secret organization that like was close knit from the beginning with each other. So I wanted it to be a character that we knew and that we wouldn't have to make an excuse for adding in later on. Then I eventually didn't ever die, and that never really happened. But it was something that we had thought about.
Yeah, I've had them make up backup characters. Ironically, they never used them. Like there was a couple of Pathfinder 1, I used to do that quite a bit. I used to always have them make backup characters. I kind of just stopped because they stopped because once I got to like level 14 and they're still all alive, and they're like, I don't know if we still need these backup like at that point it was sort of a redundant.
Yeah.
So I don't even bother now because also, like these campaigns, I mean, we've been playing these campaigns for years, and the new dragon character is an artifact. What is it, artifactor? No, it's what is it called? The
It
Pathfinder.
was an inventor, right?
Inventor. I can't remember. Too much 5e in my brain. Inventor. And so like Inventor didn't even exist. Like dragons didn't exist. Inventor didn't
They
exist.
didn't.
So
It definitely Vanessa's first character could not have been a dragon inventor.
right.
That's for sure.
Yeah. But the point is, you get to try out new things and try a new invent stuff. So I'm looking here. Yes, Path Builder does make death a lot less painful. It's only funny that everyone now uses Path Builder because I mean I grew up with Hero Lab, but I used Hero Lab a long time, and Hero Lab I like the original version better than the new one. That thing was indispensable for first edition. Making a first edition character, when I used to run games, I used to tell people if I ran like online games or play by post games, then you had to use Hero Lab, and people got into fights with me about that. Like, no way, why do I have to use it? I'm like, well, because you're going to make mistakes in your character, and they're like, that's impossible. I'm like, you make a character level 1, you make a level 1. They don't need to make a big one. Make a level 1 character, give it to me, and we'll see. And on average, there would be 3 mistakes on average. And that was a level 1 character. Now, I think it's gotten a lot better with Pathfinder Second Edition. I think it's a lot easier, especially as you level up, because the choices don't interact with each other too much. I think that's the problem with Pathfinder First Edition, is that the characters were like, there was so many moving parts that this would affect this, and in fact, and you wouldn't know that things were supposed to change. And Pathfinder 2 is a little bit more modular, and things are kind of kept, together, so it's a little bit easier. But I will say, at level 14, which is what our characters are up to, holy moly, do they have a lot of abilities on that sheet.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, like, you guys have to know your characters, because there's way too much on here. I can't remember all that. It's like, really adds up, I tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But Path Builder definitely makes pain a lot less. But I know a lot of people, they sit here, a lot of my PCs for fun, they just make characters all the time. And, it feels bad that they can't get a chance to try them out or play them. So here's a way, you could try them out. And that's something I think a lot of people get, is that itch. Like, I don't know if people out there play the same type of character over and over and over again, or even more than once. I mean, as far as I know, everyone pretty much plays a character once, like, where they'll play their fighter, and that's it. But they'll never play a fighter again, because they scratch that itch. Or they play the wizard. The only one, maybe the wizard, or if you're playing a different, that is because you can have different schools of magic. So you can play different types of spellcasters with different schools of magic. So I think that's like a cheat. But that's like saying, I'm playing a rogue versus a fighter versus a ranger, because that's different types of, melee attacks. But I think that's also a big part of it, is that you might get enough of a character. You might have seen, like, you played at 10 levels. You're like, you know what? I get it. I know what it does. I don't need to see the next 10 levels. Let me try something else. So.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, done with topic. There we go. Finished it.
Yeah, well, you made it in time for noon/3 p.m. for you.
We had more than enough time. Let's see. I was once in a game where players each had 5 characters and mix and match teams. Okay, that's interesting. Where you have, like, swapping characters in and out. I actually have seen that before, and I mean, Paranoia was famous for that, although you had clones, so they weren't really other characters.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the DCC universe. In DCC by Goodman Games, you have, like, groups of characters, because they die very quickly. So you can have a team, and you can swap them in and out as you need to. And it's kind of expected that you do that, because they just die really fast in that game. They go through, like, meat grinders. So I think Traveler, I used to do that too, because characters would die really quick. So we would have, like, a whole group of characters. I've never done that in Pathfinder, because the problem with Pathfinder is that I think games that have a really strong loot-based economy, it's hard to do, because if you don't have the right loot, then your character will be, not powerful enough. So you kind of need a way to make sure your, like, level 10 characters all have the same amount of loot, and then no one starts taking advantage of that by, like, oh, I got 5 characters and they each have loot for level 10 characters, and I'm going to give all the loot to one character. It's like, well, then you just broke the game. You can't really do that. You have to keep the loot within the same character. So I guess you can use automatic progression for that. I guess that would fix that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you use the Dragon Horde system, that'll work for that, by the way.
Giant shared dragon horde.
Yes, a giant shared dragon horde. London Matthews says, how else were you supposed to use all 45 dragon heritages? That's different. I'm actually talking about classes, but you're completely right. It's like, I have played the same heritages and ancestries, or different heritages and ancestries, more than once. That I've tried out, because those are like different classes. But the same class, not really. I always kind of play something different myself. Not that I play characters that often. So, but that idea of having like a cohort of like 3 characters or something. Of course, I don't know how you would explain that in the game. I don't know. What do you think of that, Mark? What do you think of that
How
concept?
do you explain the fact that they're like?
Well, how would you even, if it's even a good idea to have, like, instead of having a party of 4 characters, you have a party of 16 characters, and you can
bring 4 of them at any given time.
Yes.
Well, the way that works, similar to like my group that had 7 players, but only like 4 or 5 of them would make each session, which is that you have some kind of meta unit, like a rebellion or a caravan or something like that, and you say, okay, well, we came across this weird ruins in the middle of the tundra, so 5 of us are going to get out and go into the ruins, and the other ones will stay with the caravan and all the NPCs that are there.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So that's kind of how you do it. Whatever way that like Final Fantasy or other RPGs like that kind of give excuses for you have to bring only 4 people in your party, you can use excuses like that.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I also got this idea because I played 2 board games. I played Gloomhaven, which I know a lot of people have played, and then I just got Oathsworn. Okay. Oh my god, this is the highest rated game on Board Game Geek by a mile, like a good half point over Gloomhaven, and I can see why, because it's really good. One of the things about it, the problem with Gloomhaven, if anyone has, I know a lot of people played it, said you play a character, and they have this thing where your character eventually retires. And you are forced to play a different type of character.
Hey, that's like what we're talking about here, switching up.
The problem here, though, and this is a number one problem I've heard from people with playing Gloomhaven, is they'll play one character, and they love their character, and then they're forced to retire, and then they play another character, and they don't like the new character, and they're stuck with that one because you can't get out of the system. I actually... Ollie, I actually think Gloomhaven does not do character retirement well, to be honest, because I played Craighheart and I loved the Craighheart, but of course, like anyone, I wanted to scratch that itch, and then I retired Craighheart, and then I got the Quartermaster, which it was good, but it wasn't as good as Craighheart. In this game, Oathsworn, there are, I think, 12 different characters, and they have this pretty interesting thing where they have like a ranking system. I'll just show real quick of how hard the characters are to play, and trust me, they are. Like, they go from pretty easy to really complex. And yeah, here's this ranking system. You can see all the stars. So they start at 1 star there, and then it eventually goes all the way to 5 stars down there. For like the spellcasters, they say in the rules, like, you can just play whoever you want. Like, you can play the same character, just swap them out. And I'm like, oh my god, what an amazing concept! Why, I wish, Gloomhaven did that. Like, wouldn't that be nice if you just swap out characters? And they're like, yeah, you can do it, And it has this whole system of like being able to change the game. And there's 5 different levels of difficulty, and like just gives you all these options. It's almost like a video game. And I gave you that idea of like this small thing of letting you play what you want to play instead of being forced to really helps, even mentally. If you're playing permadeath, that if your character dies, you can play out a different one. So I was thinking,
it's been a while since Lyndon I played Gloomhaven, but I thought the Quartermaster was like one of the most powerful classes in the game.
It is. It's very powerful, but it always gets 1.5 turns, because that was the annoying thing, is that instead of getting 2 actions per turn, they always get 1.5 actions per turn, because their whole thing is they bring back cards and recycle them, but you need to use a card to recycle your cards. So it was this constant of like, you play some cards and then you use your best cards up, but then you play other cards to get your cards back and recycle them, and then it's a continuous, and after a while you're very much like, when you're playing Craighheart, the other ones, you feel like you're always doing something. Quartermaster was start stop. Like you play stuff, recharge, play stuff.
I think they were also
recharge.
kind of slow, so
They're
would
very
sometimes
slow.
like not be at a good part in the initiative. But I mean, that's also true of Craighheart sometimes as well.
Oh, I didn't care about that. That was, people would complain about that. Like I was talking to John. He's like, I was always last. I'm like, who cares? That I didn't mind. I didn't mind being last.
It matters somewhat if the things that go before you like change the situation, so you can't do what you wanted to do. But if you can guess what your enemies are going to do because you know what kind of possible actions they have, then yeah, it doesn't matter if you go last.
Yeah, and then
Sometimes
even
you might want to go last to have them rush in towards you, and then you blast them.
well, Oathsworn, again, they're like, you go in any order you want. I was like, oh my god, like they keep doing stuff. I was like, okay, I'm starting to see why this game is so highly rated. Like they're like, play anything you want, go in any order you want, and you know why? Because the monsters are insanely hard. So they're like, we're making this game ridiculously hard. So do whatever you want because we're gonna kill you anyhow. And it's refreshing because you're like,
Is
okay.
it much harder than Gloomhaven?
Oh yeah, it's way.
We never lost a Gloomhaven round.
It is
because it was pretty easy.
Insanely hard. It is insanely hard. It's well, here's the without getting into the rule set. Actually, I will get into the rule set. Okay, this is a big aside. You'll find this fascinating, Mark. All right.
Okay.
There's 4 different types of attacks. There's white dice, and then it goes from white, yellow, red, black. And each dice has 2 sides that are blank, 3 sides that are hits, and 1 side that's a crit. And if you crit, you roll another die. And you keep rolling dice. So if you roll and you get a crit, you roll another die. If that guy's a crit, you keep going. Okay, so you keep rolling forever.
So it's one of those systems where it's 50-50 successes, but also exploding on the top roll.
Well, it's actually it's actually not 50-50. 2 are blank, 2 are misses, and 4 are hits. The white dice do the least amount of damage. The yellow dice do a little bit more. The red dice do a little bit more. The black dice do the most by far.
So it's actually 2/3.
2/3
because it's a 6-sided. I thought it was 8-sided, and that 2 were blank and 2 were misses, and they were separate. Okay.
Here's the cool part. You ready?
Okay.
You can roll as many or as few dice as you want, up to 10. So you decide. You can push your luck. You can say, I'm going to roll 3 white dice, but if you get 2 misses, you miss.
Then the whole thing misses?
Yes, the whole thing misses. The crits, if you crit, those misses don't count. So you can roll 10 dice. As long as you don't get 2 misses, you hit.
Yeah, but if you roll 10 dice...
No one does that. But the point is, it's like, it is really fascinating because every time you're like,
If you roll 10 dice, there's probably like a 2% chance that
no one does 10 dice,
not miss.
Right. But the point is, here's where it gets interesting. So, but then sometimes you do get rerolls, though. You have the power for rerolls. I guess you said you can
miss once and it's safe.
No. You can miss if you miss once, it's safe. So if it's 2 misses, then the whole attack misses.
Okay.
But because you get to choose your own luck, it's constant. Like, you're like, how many are you going to roll? Are you going to roll, especially if you have some of the better dice? Like if you have the black dice in there, and like you get a black and red in there, and they do a lot of damage, but then you can roll as many white as you want. It's like,
so you probably don't want to roll white because you don't want to lose the black and red if you have them.
But maybe you have rerolls because that's something else. There's the ability to reroll, and so you can reroll your misses.
If you have enough rerolls, you might think you were safe.
But there's another interesting rule, is that if you use your rerolls, and if you use these other powers and you miss, you get your rerolls back plus an extra one called the determination rule. That you're so pissed that you missed that you get all your rerolls back, and then you get an extra one. It's fascinating. Now, here's the thing. The monsters, let me tell you, they roll only those black. They don't roll white dice. They only roll like the red and black dice. They never miss. So it doesn't matter. Whatever they roll is what happens. Whatever they roll is what hits. But now here's the most interesting part. Damage, you divide it. So if you have 8 points of damage and 4 armor, then you do 2 points of wounds. So, and it's rounded down. So there are ways to increase your armor. So then, because the math gets weird, so 10 isn't always 10 points of damage. It's 10 divided by the armor. So if you're like, oh, I got 10 points, of damage on 2 armor, but then you play a card and you're like, okay, now my armor's 5. It's like, whoop, went down to 2. You did 2 wounds on me. It's incredible. I have like the constant flow of dice with wounds versus re-rolling. It's like a fascinating system. I've never really seen it before, and it keeps you engaged constantly. It's very interesting. I actually have never really. I've seen a lot of game systems, but I've never seen one. It's kind of like Gloomhaven, because remember Gloomhaven, you would pull the cards, but then that deck you can sort of stack it so that you pulled better and better cards with higher and higher numbers. And if you remember, that's how that worked. In this one, you can get better and better. You can stack
You
it.
get
So
better colored dice.
you get better colored dice, which do more damage, but there's always a 20%. There's always a 33% mischance. Always. Period. That can't be mitigated ever. So
the dice never get better on that. Whereas in
No.
Gloomhaven, if you had the right build, you could get it so there was no like
you never got misses.
penalty things that were in there.
I was getting, like, I remember my thing was like all threes, and I forgot what it was. I had very high numbers in that in my deck by the end. That thing was very strong. You still
can never get rid of the flat miss that's in there. That's the one weakness of it.
Right.
But,
but like I had a ridiculous deck by the end.
Mm-hmm.
I know we went on a tangent, but I will say I can see because what happens, I'm a collector of games and systems, and whenever something is like this is the best, and when I saw that this had like a 9.3 on Board Game Geek, and it was rated by like thousands of people because they use a weighted system, I was like, okay, that's like a true 9.3. That's not like a fake. What they do is they actually, the less people that rate it, the lower the rating. So if 10 people rate something at 10, it actually is like a 7 on their site. It has to get mass. So the more people who rate it, the closer it gets to the actual average. They have thousands of ratings. So I'm like, that's a real rating. And I was like, okay, that's a half point higher than Gloomhaven, which is ridiculous. So, and if you don't think it's hard enough, Mark, it's got difficulty levels. You can change the difficulty at any time. It starts off at medium, and you can go too easy or too harder. And too harder is death incarnate, let me tell you. So, yeah, the game is.
There you go. I'm looking at it on Board Game Geek now. The review that had the most likes seems to be from someone who said they're a Pathfinder 2 player. So there
you go.
They might have good taste. They say it's easier than Gloomhaven.
It's so much easier too. It's so much easier. Like
they said it's easier to beat than Gloomhaven because characters remain strong and capable throughout the encounter rather than getting winded.
Yes, that is something else. Well, the cool thing is they have what's called a recharge mechanic. Is that if you do something and it takes 3 rounds to recharge, you could then use other cards to move your charged cards down the path, so they go down to 2, 1, and then come back into your hand. So it's a lot of mechanics. I think you should check it out. It's a fascinating game. I haven't seen these mechanics ever in games before, and it's like making me think. But this has made me think even about Pathfinder, about how, being able to have lots of flexibility and having to do things how you want to play, which we do in our products, is the right way to go. And like the number one thing that I was seeing why people like this game is that there's 100 ways to play it, and none of them are wrong. And by quote putting them in the rules, you don't feel like you're homebrewing or you're cheating. You know what I mean? Like it feels like you're doing it the way the designers intended. So
that makes sense to me.
Yeah, you can play it solo. And the other thing is they have each character has a regular mode and a simple mode. So it actually has the characters with simplified actions. They're just as powerful, but if you want to play solo, or because you have to play 4 players, the other characters, again, unlike Gloomhaven, have simplified actions where they can only do a few things. And that's it. But they don't have quite as many abilities. But you don't have to keep track of like the recharges and stuff. They just get the abilities, and every turn they get to redo those cool abilities. So that's something else you can do. So you can play it easy or hard. And if you die in combat, you come back as a man-at-arms or one of your allies, who are definitely not as good, but at least you're still in the combat. And the game you only die if everyone dies. Like if all your characters die and all the men-at-arms die, then the combat is over, and then you got to start it over. So you got to redo it. The other thing is half the game is role-playing and half the game is combat. And the role-playing aspect is very deep, like stunningly deep. Like I did the first chapter 4 times, and each time is a completely different story. It's choose your own adventure, but it's but depending on your actions, it's like the book, it's like the Legendary Kingdom book. Depending on your results, depends on what happens. So you don't get to always choose. And it was significantly different. It wasn't just like, it was like slightly different. It was like went down completely different routes, completely different ways, encountered new people, new abilities. I was like, holy crap. Like I played it 4 times and each time was totally unique. So I was like, holy crap. It's very good. Knights of Last Call. Look, Derek made it. Hey, Derek. Derek, what is your favorite board game of all time? I know what it is, but we're going to have him say it in chat because I know what his favorite board game of all time is. As we wait for it to catch up. What's your favorite board game of all time, Mark?
I don't know.
Or at least one that you liked a lot.
So I definitely enjoyed back in the day when it came out, especially Agricola as a worker placement game, because it had so many like random occupation and minor improvement cards that would get dealt out that you really felt like you were encouraged to do a different strategy each time. And I did like that. Hey, look, Derek said Agricola or Caverna too.
There you go. We're talking about.
He said it right after I did, although he probably going to see my Agricola after he typed it.
So one of my favorite of all time is we used to play games at lunch every day in Manhattan when I lived in Manhattan, and the one that kept coming back to over and over again. We would play all the Carcassonne games, but Carcassonne the City. First of all, the game comes in a wooden box. I don't know if they do that anymore. Is very good. And every game was the winner and the loser were within like 10 points. So it was definitely a game of skill. Like there was definitely a little bit of luck, but I like games where like you can definitely win it if you know what you're doing and you do the right moves.
Whichever version of Carcassonne I played
every Carcassonne.
Whichever one it was, I think it was close to the base set. It felt like it was really luck based because you would try to set something up, but then
you get destroyed.
If you don't draw a tile that's the right tile, then you get none of it, and somebody else just gets it.
That's right.
It seemed like it was almost entirely based on luck, with skill helping to. Skill definitely, if you had low skill, you just wouldn't do anything good. But even if you had high skill, it didn't matter because you just wouldn't get the tile you needed to finish what you were doing.
I liked Carcassonne the City. I would say check that one out. I'm trying to think what else that I really enjoyed a lot in my favorite board games. Survive, but that's like a fun kid game. That's still out. They reprinted that. That's a fun game. It's a very fun game. We played a lot. We used to play, what did we used to play? Like some of the old... Well, you know what's actually one of my favorite is Citadels with like 8 people. If you have like a full group, that game is fantastic.
Which one was that one?
That is where you play a different... It's like you play a different type of character, and each character goes at different points of initiative.
Right, yeah. There's like the assassin,
the king,
right?
The king, the queen,
and somebody who's stealing money or something.
Right, the merchants. Yeah,
I think I played that once. It seemed pretty fun.
It's very well with 8. It's one of these games you need like 8-9 people. If you get the full game, because if you only play as many people as you have. And if you have everyone in the game, because everyone can mess with everyone, it's actually, I know you hate social deduction, and I kind of do too. This is social deduction, but like using card mechanics.
I'm okay with games that have a social deduction element. I just don't like the games that are like kind of purely social deduction with player elimination.
Well,
they lead to bad
like Monopoly. Metas. The worst game ever made in history.
Monopoly is really not good.
It's not good. And if you want to read the history of Monopoly,
it was supposed to show that capitalism was like...
No, there was 2 parts to Monopoly. There was 2 games. There was Monopoly, And then there was the opposite, which is, I forget what it was called. So it was invented by, I feel terrible. It was invented by a woman. She had two games. One was Monopoly, showing the terrible parts of capitalism. And then there was another one called, I think, like Prosperity. And it was the opposite of Monopoly. It showed like group dynamics and like thinking. And it was designed as counterpoints. And that's why then these two games were made together. Legend, of course, is they stole it from her. They kept the Monopoly part. They got rid of the other one, and kind of the rest is history. That game is atrocious. I don't even know why it's so interesting. And the weirdest part is my mom is from Atlantic City, so everything in a Monopoly is from Atlantic City. All the street names. So whenever we drive around, I always see the street names all the time. So, but man. And no one plays it right. If you play Monopoly right, you'll never play it again because it is a brutal game. Because you knock people out. Like the whole point of the game. And then you have to buy and sell each other's properties to get property. It's terrible. Like it's such a bad game. I can go on and on about it. Ugh.
Yep.
And 50%
Candyland is still worse because you don't actually play.
Yeah, Candyland's bad.
You have no decisions.
50% of American households have Monopoly in their house. I am proud to say I am not one of them. I do not. I refuse. However, I do have the Simpsons Clue in my house. Clue's okay. Although if you see Glass Onion, which I saw this weekend, there's a whole thing about her. He goes on and on about how Clue is a terrible game because they actually use like a Clue little grid to figure out who's doing it. And then he's like, oh, it's like Clue. And she's like, oh, Clue, terrible game. Because it's not realistic at all. Because in Clue, when you fill out the grid of like who did it, you can figure out who did it. But in Glass Onion, it's like a bit of a spoiler. The whole grid is filled out. It's like this isn't like Clue at all. That's why it's terrible. Because you don't have things neat like they have in Clue. It's funny. Anyhow, Monopoly is like 5e. Yes, everyone has it. Everyone plays it, and it's terrible. It's not terrible. I'm kidding.
5e is not a bad game like Monopoly. Okay.
It's not
Monopoly
terrible.
is legitimately terrible.
Yes.
5e is doing exactly what it wants to do as a game, and it's successful because of that. Whereas Monopoly, I just don't even really understand why it became successful.
I don't either. Well, I don't know. I'd like to... Actually, well, it didn't. It became successful, and then it stopped. And then they were the first people to do co-branding.
Yeah.
And...
it worked for them
it still does.
pretty well. Although Magic the Gathering, it sounds like people are somewhat upset by some of the co-branding there.
The co-branding is getting a little out of control, and it's getting more than a little. It's totally out of control in Magic the Gathering. It's too much. It actually is way too much. And I mean, they're starting to co-brand 5e a little bit. I mean, they get the Magic Worlds in there. They're starting to. They're getting that. They're going to obviously anything from the new movie is going to be in there. I wouldn't be surprised, though, that you're going to start seeing, the Marvel Universe in 5e one day. And I don't mean a 5e version of the Marvel Universe. I mean Marvel characters in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Because that's much more marketable and interesting than having their own version, because they won't sell as many of that. So a Monopoly there already is a Monopoly setting for 5e. There already is. D&D Monopoly's been out for a long time, actually. They have D&D Yahtzee that just came out, by the way, and they have D&D Trivial Pursuit, which is hard as hell, by the way. I looked at that. I'd be curious if we played it. I could get like 10% of the questions right, because they ask you like, what is the component for like the spell, like some third level. I'm like, how the hell? I don't know this. I don't know the component for a spell third level. Like, okay, Featherfall, yeah, I think it's a feather, like that one I know, but like there's a few other
the material components.
Yeah, the material component, that was it.
Like how for like one of the illusory images is wool that you pull over someone's eyes.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, okay, because I was curious. I was like, what type of questions can you ask for this? And I was like, okay, if they're getting to that level of minutia, it ain't fun. That's too much. And this will be the last question because I got to go. Could you co-board? Or you mean co-brand? Pathfinder 3 with. You read it. You read it. You read it, Mark.
I will read it.
I don't have my glasses on.
It says, if you could co-board Pathfinder 2e with something, what do you think would be the most interesting fit? And they meant co-brand.
They meant co-brand. I don't know. What do you think, Mark? You're Mr. Five.
I mean, well, you could definitely co-brand with like some kind of, maybe with like another fantasy based,
yeah, like Lord of the Rings.
IP.
Lord of the Rings, Xanth. Ooh, Xanth would be interesting. Trying to think. The problem with Lord of the Rings is they don't really have that many ancestries in Lord of the Rings. You see, the power.
Yeah, but I feel like what you could do is you could ancestry, like as a concept, doesn't have to be the same as what D&D used for races, right? So
Yeah.
you've already got elves, dwarves, hobbits, and humans, but you could have ancestries that are more of like the different types of, like the humans who are from different areas could have some different stuff or something like that.
Yeah.
You
Warcraft.
could figure it out.
Yeah, Warcraft.
There aren't really a ton of classes in Lord of the Rings though, because like,
yeah, that's the
in terms
problem.
of magic users, you like probably would not be using magic unless you're one of a few people.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. It would have to be a setting that's similar. You know, one of the cool things, actually, World of Warcraft would be perfect, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I think Galarian was indirectly based off World of Warcraft. Definitely the world was, because the thing about World of Warcraft is you have all these areas, and you have like, okay, here's the Darklands, here's the technology area, here's the dinosaur land. Like you literally go from zone to zone, which is exactly what Galarian is. They have zone to zone. So that works out very well. The classes are very similar. They have a ton of ancestries. They have goofy ones in there quite a bit. Magic system, they have rarities. They have, same thing that we have in Pathfinder. That would work out very well.
I think you could do it with WoW, and it wouldn't be
that different.
At all.
No, it wouldn't be that
plenty of
different.
Ancestry fodder.
Yeah,
you can put in some of the classes that are there.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think that would be a very solid co-brand that obviously has a wide audience.
Stormlight and 5e, by the way, John Stats. When you play World of Warcraft, John Stats, he made Stormlight, so thank him. So when you're flying your dragon and trying to clip the edges, he sat there for, I think it took him a year. Because when they went from the old engine to the new one, he had to rebuild it. Actually, I think it was 6 months. He had to sit there making sure there's no holes in any buildings so you couldn't fly your dragon into or fly any of your creatures into that. Because when they first built it in the first engine, they didn't go above the ground, so you can clip everything. But then when they put flying in the game, they had to rebuild every single aspect of the game to make sure you couldn't clip it in anything. And he was tasked to redo Stormlight because it was the oldest in the game and it was the hardest. So
Stormwind City?
Stormwind. I meant Stormlight.
Stormlight is Stormlight Archive. They're talking about Brandon Sanderson, which
yeah,
also came up in the chat.
Oh, Stormlight. I was talking about Stormwind. I misread. Again, I don't have my glasses on. Stormlight.
I think it's too different.
It's too different. There's not enough classes.
And other things work.
Yeah, there's no ancestries. There's not enough classes.
I mean, there definitely are ancestries in Stormlight, but the problem is that the classes, just the magic system is very, very important. And so you'd want everybody to like be some kind of a Knight Radiant, because otherwise, like Stormlight Archive is the example of the caster martial disparity, where like you have Adeline, who's like, I'm one of the best sword users ever. Like, I'm better at using swords and being a fighter. Everyone's like, that's great. You're still useless because you don't have magic like everybody else has. And I feel for him. He's a nice guy who doesn't have magic. But Pathfinder 2nd Edition tries to have less of a disparity between casters and marshals, so you'd probably be better off in a system that had more of a disparity.
The problem with Stormlight is that every class is based off 2 magic types, right? And then there's another 10. So there's, I forgot the names, I haven't read in a while, but there was the 10 core magics, and then there's the other anti-magics, or the bad ones. So there's 20 types of magic, and then everyone has 2 of those magic types. So they could have 2 of the magic types. So your system for Stormlight would have to have, okay, what 2 do you combine to build your class?
I mean, that's not too bad, given that there's a Mistborn where you could have someone who was an allomancer and a feruchemist, or a Mistborn, and they had the different
Just a lot of combos to test, though.
Yes. Oh, certainly. Oh, certainly.
It's like
but
10 times 10.
you would clearly want it to be its own system.
Yeah.
And I think it's not 10 times. I think
it's 10
Mistborn
factorial.
is, but
it's 10 factorial.
Not for Stormlight, because it's a wheel where if you have 2, they're next to each other.
Oh, right. They have to be next to each other.
So like there's only 2 that have flying, and they're like the super lawful people,
right.
and the I
haven't looked at it in a long time.
Ones like what do you call them? The Windrunners.
Yeah.
And they are the ones that overlap on flying, so it's a wheel. So there's actually only.
I thought it was like you can go across, but I haven't looked at the map in a while.
I think it's a wheel, but
I don't know. I don't remember. The point is, it's a lot of combos, and that's the central part
it's maybe 10
of the
classes.
game.
You could do it, but you can't do it in Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
No, you have to rewrite it. You'd have to rewrite it. No, the only one that I think is literally almost a 1-to-1 is World of Warcraft, because it's
WoW would work great.
You
need to write new classes for some
similar.
of the
you need to like a Death Knight,
there, but that's fine. That's totally good for a code.
Yeah.
You would want to have a new class. For,
you need Shaman, Death Knight.
Yeah,
I mean, you already have a Hunter. That's a Ranger with like some
you totally are fine on that. And our
fighters,
Minotaur ancestry
mage.
could be the Tauren for you if you want.
Yeah,
ours are kind of more like Tauren because they're less evil than the one in the bestiary.
Yeah, it totally would work. And then, I'll say one thing, and then I got to go. Hey, guess what? We got a rare item in the game the other day, Mark, which never happens. You know what they got?
What?
Lich Eye Gem.
Oh, and one of the Demi-Lich Eye Gems.
Demi-Lich Eye Gem. And the thing about that, it's like, the way to craft it, kill a Demi-Lich. It's like you can't even craft it. It's like there's no way to get it.
It's super overpowered for its level too, because it gives you a spell once per day that you normally would get in an item that's like 2 levels higher than
level 8 spell. Yeah.
Most of the time, rare items are not overpowered.
Well, guess what?
The Lich Eye Gem is, but on the other hand, like it's on the GM if they decided to make you fight a Demi-Lich, and then even then it says that a lot of the time you can't recover the eye gem.
Here's the problem.
If you decide to let them recover the eye gem,
although they got it, but they only got one. So one eye gem had maze, and the other one had mind blank, and they got
very strong.
They got the mind blank one.
Mind blank is good, and it's a great way to put it on your character who goes invisible, and then nobody can use divinations against you.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I was for, because the Lich was hiding, and the first thing they asked me, they're like, A, can we change out the spell? And B, can we put maze on it instead? I'm like, nope. And they're like, this sucks. They're like,
buy a wand of maze. It costs like twice as much as the Lich Eye Gem.
I know. Well, I was like, it's 3,000 or I think 4,000 gold. So they're like, well, I guess we're selling it because no one needs the divination protection. But it was good. Anyhow, I gotta go.
All right, take care.
Thanks everyone for joining us.
Back to Battle Zoo.
Yes, Battle Zoo stuff, and don't forget Dragon Sale if you want the Dragon book.
That's right.
This week only.
It's a stacking 10% off.
Yes,
if you like stacking your bonuses.
The discount on the site, everything on sale is already on sale with another sale. So you stack your sales. Just use the code DRAGONS plural at checkout.